Oh, my dear friend, Katie, welcome back to the show. So good to
Thank you,
have you.
Lisa. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited for today.
So, Katie's been on the show before. I won't link to her previous episodes in the show notes. But Katie and I were dear friends, and we talk all the time about this like chicken and the egg concept, right? So, is it you've got to get your executive functioning together before you can get career clarity? Or the opposite way around, you get career clarity and then you grow your executive functioning as you're working on that career development journey. So, we don't really have that answered, but we know that these things both affect one another, right?
It's true. And I don't know if it's a chicken before the egg or the egg before the cart before the whatever the thing is. I think
Yes.
there's always a time and a place to be working on developing our executive functions. And when we have a big project or a big transition, college, figuring out our careers and our majors, whenever those big moments are on the horizon, if there is a lack of executive functions, that's when that lack of executive functions often shows up and explodes. And it can often make that ultimate goal of finding the right college path or career path feel or actually be insurmountable, especially if we're talking about, kids with ADHD or executive dysfunction, or even those who are neurotypical and just haven't
Yeah.
developed those executive function skills yet.
Well, I think it's when we don't have a process, we don't know the next step with the work that I do, even for neurotypical kiddos, it feels bigger than it is. I always say, our feelings are not facts, but
Mhm.
this age group that I work with, 15 to 25-year-olds, the feelings are, like you said, insurmountable. Like they can become primary. And so I work all the time on let's interrogate your feelings against the facts. And I see a little bit of it lift then, but I know you've got tools that help it really even more. Our listeners, one thing I love about Katie and the work that she does with executive functioning is she works with teens all the way up to adult professionals, our age. So she sees the whole gamut. And so she can look at what is happening back here with a young person and know how it's going to impact them potentially even into adulthood if they don't get some tools, tips. I hate to call them tricks. Do you call them tricks?
No, I mean, sometimes if I'm trying to get someone to click on something, I'm like, here's a
Yeah.
trick. And then I'm like, actually, it's a full strategy, system, and method. Right? Like bait them with chocolate and give them the broccoli they need, kind of thing. Yeah.
So with
Yeah.
those adult professionals, I guess, that you're serving, what do you see that is impacting career success with them?
Great question. In a positive way or a negative way, or am I taking
What
this
holds
either
them
way?
back? I guess really
That
what holds
holds
them
them
back,
back.
because that's what
Yeah.
I'm always working on, right? Like, what's holding you back to get to where you want to be? Like, identifying where you want to be and then how you get there. And so, when you have an adult professional that takes part of your coaching and learns your strategies, what is it that they're trying to get unstuck? I know you've already said, I just gave it away. There's two of them, but
There
what are
are.
what are the two biggest unlocks that then make a difference for them?
That's a great question. So I would say it's externalizing or creating external systems for the things that they're often trying to keep in their heads. And you made a good point earlier talking about feelings and feelings aren't facts. And, we often associate big feelings and small tools with children and adolescents. But if someone doesn't learn how to create or, yeah, create tools to manage the invisible things
Yeah.
like feelings and time and tasks, then we don't have success in whatever space that we're trying to perform in, right? So, working professionals, the two biggest, I would say, skill deficits that are holding professionals back are a lack of task management and a lack of time management systems. And I think, I mean, that right there could be a chicken and egg
Yeah.
conundrum. Which one do we
Yeah.
start with first? Which one's important? And, which one do we develop first? And which one depends on the other? And I like to think of it as two independent systems that need to exist by themselves first. So you can build one first, build the next, build them simultaneously. Doesn't matter. They need to exist independently and they also need to sync together. And so
Mm.
sometimes somebody could create a task management system and it works for them, but they're missing the time management system. And then they're wondering why they're overwhelmed and they're, stressed out and they're not reaching their goals and they're not, moving forward. Or they may
Yeah,
have a
like I did
time
the
management.
thing and
Yes.
it didn't fix
Right.
my problem. Okay.
Right. Or they might have, time and task management systems created, but they don't sync together. And in that case, you have the same, lack of movement and lack of progress. So time and task management systems, I would say, are the two critical systems that if they're not explicitly taught, at a younger age, adolescence, college, then oftentimes a young professional can arrive in the workforce being like, how do I manage all of these things when I don't have a student portal, right? And I don't have
Right.
teachers being like, whoopsies, the assignment was late. I'll get you, an extra day. Real life professional space doesn't work that way. So the consequences are often more significant when someone doesn't have these systems.
And that's why I wanted to start with this profile of an adult professional because
Mm,
when you are underperforming, not performing maybe at all, but when you're underperforming in your job as an adult, when we think about our own children, what I hear from parents all the time and what I want for our 5 kids is to be happy, independent, thriving individuals. And if you're miserable in your job, you're probably not that happy person that we as parents aspire to be raising. So I thought, like, okay, let's start with what we diagnose from the adults because now every listener, whether they have a child or children or they work with kids, that allows them to go like, okay, then when should we address this and how do we address it? Now,
mhm.
so really truly like if somebody had a teenager or a college student or I don't know, 23-year-old who's in their first job, you really don't care if they start with task management or time management first?
Well, I would say let's start with task management. So, task
Okay.
management are one of the things.
Yeah.
And we're not going to have success in school or, at university or in your career if you don't have some way to assess what the things are, track their status, make sure that they're being completed on time, long-term projects, things like that. That there has to be some way to capture what are the things that are expected of me and what is my status on those. And then once that's created, so a task management system for students, a huge mistake that I often see is students saying, well, I just use the portal, the LMS, right? Google Classroom, Canvas,
Yeah.
Brightspace, whatever the heck it is. That was designed for teachers. Think of a portal, a door that's swinging in and out, right? So it's teachers post the assignments and then the students submit the assignments. That's it. The assignments go in and out, but there's absolutely no way whatsoever for a student to manage the work themselves. They have no control over that system. They can't add their tasks. They can't track the steps of a long-term project. The teacher might post something that says an essay is due on Friday or next Friday in 2 weeks.
Right.
Well, what about all the micro steps that are involved in writing that essay and making that happen? A student has no control over the student portal to be like, well, I'm going to write my intro on a Monday and I'm going to do my first paragraph on a Tuesday. You can't add study sessions. Study sessions are tasks. They take up legitimate time. But if a
Yeah.
student is relying on the portal, which is not, I'm going to repeat, like it's the hill I die on. It is not a task management system. It is a tool designed for teachers to deliver material and for a
That's
student to submit it.
so that's a huge
Mhm.
unlock because I'm sure
Yeah.
that parents are sitting there going like, I'm logging in and checking the things, my
Yep.
kid's logging in and checking the things.
Mm.
And to think that you're making us think differently. I love that. So it is
Yep.
so your child's Schoology's one we have in my area,
Yeah.
School Links. So if you have one of those, view it as a teacher system.
Yep.
And that is your child, if they're relying on that, they are not managing their tasks. So that
That's
would be,
correct.
I was going to ask you, and so you already started with it, but I'm also wondering, like, if I'm a parent of a high school or a college student, what are the symptoms that I don't have a task management system? So that would be one of them is you're relying on the teacher system to guide
Yep.
your task. What are there any others?
Certainly. Students who are like, well, I'll just remember. Like I'm keeping this all in my head. And that we have to move away from that ridiculous story. We do not store information like that in our head. And I know for sure that, I have teenagers as well. And my daughter's like, I have my task management system. I've taught her how to do that. And my son is like, I'm just remembering it. I'm like, oh my gosh, my own kids, they do resist this, but our brains are not designed to store
Yeah.
non-relevant information that's not related to our survival, which is what these assignments are. And so, another symptom would be a kid insisting that they're keeping it in their head, but the evidence is missed assignments, late assignments, wild procrastination, everything done at the 11th hour, asking for a lot of extensions, a lot of overwhelm. And then, you have all these missed assignments, but the new ones are still coming. And so how do you manage a backlog of assignments when the new ones are still coming? And then oftentimes that creates, paralysis, and the students are
Yeah.
doing absolutely nothing. And then it turns into, well, there's just too much and the teacher's mean and yada, yada. In reality, there was no legitimate task management system. Task management systems are foundational, we'll say, to students and then moving upwards into the professional space as well.
Well,
Yeah,
as you were sitting here, you were talking about, even your own children being resistant. And teenagers can be so much fun when you're asking them
it
to do
can be.
something that they don't want to do. I remember raising some that was not that long ago for me. What I started to think about as a professional myself, and I love organization, I love systems. Just, I talk a lot about having a culture of conversation in our
Mhm.
homes. And so, parents, one thing that you could probably do is talk to your kiddo about like what you use if you're working outside the home and your boss or your team gives you something to do, sharing with them like how you manage that, right? And if you're listening to this, you might be going like, "Oh, I need to do better too." So,
Yeah, I
okay,
think modeling is a great
modeling's
strategy.
huge.
Yeah. Mhm.
Well, and it's a non-threatening way to just start talking about your own work. I I say all the time, like we have to be careful as adults. I see parents go like they're sitting around the dinner table and are like, "Oh, I had the worst day." And kids start to think these things about work, period, or specific careers based on what we are sharing just on a off moment flippant comment, but it has real impact. And I often see it to the negative with careers and work, but this would be a way to like flip that and make it positive, right?
Mhm. Absolutely.
Like, hey, we're
Absolutely.
starting this new project at work. It's pretty overwhelming. Like, let's talk about these things to normalize it.
And I
So,
think that can happen as well. Sorry,
yeah.
I get so
Oh,
excited. I think that sort of modeling what the parents are doing at work behavior applies to time management as well.
mm,
Because if a parent is saying, like let's say the kid says, "Hey, can I go to Johnny's birthday party on Sunday?" For a parent to be like, "Hold on, let me check the calendar. It looks like Sunday we actually have another obligation. Maybe I can move that obligation to Saturday so that we can go to Johnny's birthday party," right? So
mm,
having that conversation about time being something that can also be managed. Otherwise, to this time is so abstract. And I hear parents often be like, well, my kid just needs to manage time better. What the heck does that mean? How do we manage something we can't see, we can't hold? Right, it's invisible, and we expect our kids to know how to manage something that we ourselves don't necessarily know how to articulate how we manage it, right? So
yep,
making time visible with calendars, that's a doesn't matter. I'm very tool agnostic. It doesn't matter if it's paper or digital. Most of my students these days are on Google Calendar or something like that. But there has to be also a conversation about time being real and time being math and numbers and something that we
yeah,
can control, right? That's that time management system that also has to exist independently. And then you have your task management system, and then they sync together. And Lisa,
yeah,
you may be having a question on the tip of your tongue, and that's
yeah,
the role of the interviewer, but I have an analogy, and I
yes,
feel like I
yes.
might forget it.
Okay, okay.
Okay. Let's see if this works. Okay. I'm picturing we're gonna set the context here as an airport. Okay,
Okay,
we're in an airport. And I'm picturing that all of the tasks, the students' time tasks and obligations and commitments as being airplanes.
okay,
Those are all the airplanes in the sky, and they're coming from the left, the right, the east, the west. They're swirling around. They're okay. Those are the tasks. The task management system is going to be like the air traffic control tower and the air traffic schedule that says, I know this plane is coming from the left at 4 o'clock. I know this plane is coming here. We got these two planes about to whoopsies collide. We need to manage that, right? And without a tower and someone, in that tower, those planes are going to either be hovering around till they run out of gas. They're going to
Yep.
crash. They're going to end up at the wrong destination. They're going to, gosh, knows what the heck happens to planes. All right. Then we have, so that's task management. Okay, a tower, is this making sense? I'm
It
hoping this
is.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Except for the
Then
fact that you said this plane's coming from the left. And I'm like, well, they're probably like from north, south, east. Okay.
semantics. Then we
You will
have the
not be our
runway.
air traffic controller because I don't feel safe.
Okay, disclaimer, I will not drive your plane. So then we're looking at all like the runways, the open runways and the slits that or
Yep.
slots that the airplanes go into. And so that's the potential places that these plans could land. So that's the time. That's the potential time. We're talking about
Yep.
time management now. The planes and the tower were tasks and task management. Now we're looking at the runways and slots.
Like
That's
what's
time.
the availability to
Right.
bring these
What
in
exists.
or out?
Correct.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Mhm. And then the runway schedule is your time management, where you're saying, okay, this runway is going to be open at 6 o'clock for a plane. This runway
Yep.
B will be open at 4 o'clock for a plane. Can't put a plane on that at 4 o'clock because I already have a plane at 4 o'clock on that runway, but that runway is open, right?
Yep.
So that's time management. And together, with task and time management operating together, and that's what I was talking about at the top of the episode with like syncing
Right.
together, you have airplanes and you know where they are and you know where they're coming in from the left or the right or the east or the west. And you know that they're not going to crash and you know which runway is open and you
Yep.
know what time and you know you can safely land the plane on schedule and there is no chaos,
Well,
right? And
and safety, right? I mean, like, so what I love about your
exactly.
analogy that you beautifully had for us is I mean, there's something very real at risk when we apply it to that. It doesn't feel as risky with your previous example of, hey, can I go to Johnny's house at 3 o'clock on Sunday? Oh, we double booked ourselves. But the consequences can grow. And that's one of the things, too. I just talked about this on a recent episode of our show here, where it's like the consequences as kids get older are bigger. I can tell you that from being a mom of young adults, that the consequences are bigger. Even the time consequences, right? Like if you're
Mhm.
late for work over and over, you're going to get fired, right? If you're late from school, you're being marked tardy,
Mhm.
right? You might get a detention. The stakes are lower. But to learn these skills before we're, in the workplace is
Yeah.
huge.
Exactly. And these two systems, time and task management, are scalable. They're the two of the most scalable systems. And so when
Yeah.
you learn, let's say, for example, task management as a student, and then you go through college, university, whatever comes after, internships in your professional career, you can scale that. You don't have to start over and reinvent the wheel because you
Right.
understand conceptually how task management works. You need to know that there are multiple input sources. It's not just your student portal.
Right.
It's also your email. It's also what the coach said at practice. It's also your work schedule. It's also the thing that your mom said. It's also the family, I don't know, skylight calendar task
Yeah.
list that you're responsible for. It's the dog schedule that you promised your parents you would follow, right? And so it's
Yep.
knowing that you have all these input sources and you need to put them into one source of truth. And that is where your task management system is born, essentially. It's bringing all these things into one place and then knowing how to manage them once you have them in that one place. Oftentimes our students are so overwhelmed with all of the input and they don't even think of the coach being a source of tasks, the parents, the
Yeah.
music director, the neighbor who wants them to babysit, next week or whatever. The kids are just like, well, it's in the portal. No,
Right.
that's just one plane manufacturer, right?
Yeah.
If we're going with our analogy. But there's planes everywhere, and some of the kids don't even know where the planes are coming. They don't even know to turn left, east, or west. They don't even know to look up at the sky to find that the planes are even up there. So
Like
that's,
I'm
I'm
also
making this.
sitting here. No, well, I'm also sitting here thinking about like how we run our organization at Flourish Coaching, right? So we use Trello, which is our project management system where we assign each other tasks, we communicate what's going on. That's much like the teacher portal.
Mhm.
I'm sure we have working parents that are listening who are like, yeah, we're using Monday or Asana or
Yep.
Trello, or we have one native to our organization.
Hmm.
And that's kind of like the school portal. But
Yep.
yet, I say to my business coaching clients all the time, most of our listeners know that I keep a small cohort of business coaching clients, that they need that project management for the team. I always say, let's get a team board going for your small business. I only work with small businesses. But then I'll say, okay, so that task that you have to do, don't just say, like, I'm going to get it done next week. Literally slot it in
Yep.
on your calendar. When are you going
Hmm.
to do it? And
Yep.
so that's the professional side of how this works for sure. Now, it probably seems weird that we're talking about this in summer, but you and I, the reason we intentionally did it was we were talking about, like, I asked you, is it possible to gain traction and new skills over the summer when we're not in
Hmm.
school, when we're not in high school, when we're not in college, for at least our listeners with students, right?
Yes.
So
Yep.
that post Labor Day, they are hitting, or, August, if that's when your school starts, they're hitting they're hitting the runway
Oh my gosh.
and they're able to take off. I wasn't going to say that, but like you
Yeah.
set me up, right? Okay. And you said absolutely. So
Absolutely. Yep.
I think even I, as a mom, I'm like, okay, show me how. Our listeners
Yep.
love to know how. Because if I sit here and go, well, we don't have a lot of schoolwork to manage, those that are already in Launch Career Clarity with us, they do have tasks to manage with
Hmm.
their time. A common error that I see all families make is thinking, like, oh, it's summer. The lazy days of summer undermine us, right?
Hmm.
And we just can't, we feel like, oh, well, we can't do anything. We're just supposed to be lounging by the pool. So, how
Yep.
do we take what you're teaching us to gain traction over the lazy days of summer so that when that comes to an end, we're going to have a better fall, whether it's in high school, in college, or in our profession?
Hmm. Great. And I think you set it up right to say that summer is, the perfect time to sort of develop these skills. It's hard to learn how to drive a plane while you're flying it. Oh my gosh, this
Yep.
metaphor is just like
It won't
cruising.
stop.
It's not going to die. And so I do have the assignment management power system. It is a program that is so bite sized. You can get through it in a weekend and implement it on a Monday, right? So we're not talking about
Okay.
let's stay inside and,
Yeah.
dedicate our whole entire summer to learning this skill. And basically it's assignmentmanagementsystem.com. It's called the power system. And that's exactly what it is. It teaches exactly what we're talking about today. And
Yeah.
it teaches students what those input sources are, where they need to be looking for their tasks, how to consolidate all of those tasks into one source of truth. I teach them how to figure out what kind of, is that going to be digital? Is it an app? Is it paper? What is that, right? There's some flexibility there for sure, what that looks like. But then how do you manage those tasks once you even are aware that you have them, right?
Yeah.
How do you manage the long-term tasks? How do you start thinking about even studying for a test as a series of tasks that
Yeah.
consume time and take up time and energy? And then so I teach a system for tracking the status of tasks, how to complete late work, like the backlog of the late work when the new stuff is coming, so that you can dig yourself out of the hole. And it's a very bite-sized program for one of the most significant skills. Like the ROI on that program, I would say is more significant than anything you could be doing this summer besides working on your college essay.
I
You
mean,
are.
career clarity is
Oh,
tough,
of
but
course. Well, that
that
goes
was a
without
given, right?
saying. That was a given. But I think it's one of those things where sometimes people don't think about the system that they need or the skill that they don't
Yeah.
have until they're already feeling all kinds of things and experiencing the consequences that you were talking about.
Yeah.
And in the summertime, it's not like kids don't have anything going on, because there's
Yeah.
often summer jobs and, other things like that.
Volunteer
Maybe.
stuff.
Exactly. Summer
Yep.
courses for sure. And so you can learn the strategy and the system that I teach in the assignment management power system and start practicing it and applying it on like a little bit lower scale.
It's
There's
almost
stuff
like the
going on.
micro things, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So that by the time school hits for real in the fall, it doesn't matter how many planes are in the sky, because like your airport is running perfectly smoothly and you
Right.
know what to do when
You
there's
built
so
the
many
system
planes.
to just
Yeah,
so you almost have like a
exactly.
plug and play once school
Yes.
starts.
That is exactly it. And then once you have that, you can move on to time management and sync them all together.
So, how long do you think it takes for like task management to be built out? Or like, would you recommend somebody starts building the task management and then once they're at a certain point, they start to layer on some of the time?
Mhm.
Or do you get task management to completion and then move over to time?
That's a good question. I mean, so
It
in
might
the
depend
way
on
that
the student. I mean, I don't know.
it does. And it depends on,
Okay.
what are all the things that they have if they are, I don't want to say just a student, but if all they're
Yeah.
managing is schoolwork, which is still a lot, right?
Yeah.
But there's also students who have like jobs and
Yep.
all these other things that they have to do. But I would say that if you follow the way that I teach it in the assignment management power system, you can honestly get through all of the little micro videos and strategies that I teach you in, you know, under 2 hours.
Okay.
And then you're like, okay, I know conceptually how this works. Then you get
Yeah.
your tool again, and I give Rex in there and stuff too. But let's say that you're going to use a planner. Let's just say that
Yeah.
right
I do.
away.
I mean,
Of course,
I have a
yeah,
digital calendar, but I use the
yeah,
full focus
same.
planner. Yeah.
hmm
Love.
And so once you understand conceptually how task management truly works and how to
Yep.
track a task from, first being assigned into fully completed and submitted, then you could start using that system like the very next day. The
Yeah.
moment you have something that comes at you, a student over the summer is going to be tasked with something to do the next day. A parent is going to say, "Hey, can you drop this package off at the mail?"
Well, I
Cool.
was
And
just
you can
thinking that I was
uh-huh.
like, okay, as parents, I was talking recently about like at what ages my kids started doing laundry and
Hmm.
by what age they were fully responsible for it and what did I do first. And so part of this independence to get them out on their own 2 feet. They've got to have a paying job, they've got to have executive functioning. They just need to know how to manage a household, an
Yeah.
apartment that we're not going to be creeped out walking into because it's so dirty as their parent. And so layering on these independent skills that they're going to need. So that would be a great way to apply what you've given us. Katie, this has been so
Certainly.
great. Thank you. So, for those that are interested in checking out your task management system and getting trained on how to do it, where do they find it?
Assignment management system that will
Perfect.
take you to a page that explains how it works. You can enroll right there, and it's really accessible. It's a $47 program. I wanted it
Yeah.
to be something where people can, get it, consume it, and watch the payoff. Everybody should have access to these skills, and a lot of things in education are feel inaccessible to our kids. And
I love
so
it.
this is something that if you want to have a productive summer, and you know what too, I've heard parents say after
Yeah.
they've gotten their kid through it, they're like, "Wait, I started doing that stuff too."
Yeah.
After they watched after their kid went through it. So the system, these skills are scalable to the career for sure.
I'm gonna say we teach how to build your LinkedIn profile, how to network, how to
Mhm.
communicate on LinkedIn with confidence, how to search for jobs on there, how to study the anatomy of a job on there. And I get parents in our program all the time of the kiddos who are doing the work. I call them kiddos, even if they're mine and they're 30. But I of the kiddos, the parents going like, "Oh, you know what? That made me update my LinkedIn profile." So,
Yep.
well, Katie,
Timeless.
thanks.
Of course. Thanks for having me on the show. I love talking with you, Lisa. I think we covered some good ground today.
Thank you. Have a great summer.
Yeah, you too.